Rintarou was a scary and often overlooked guy because of his tall and intimidating appearance. This deeply affected him emotionally, causing him to give up on socializing. However, everything changed when he met Kaoruko Waguri, a kind and sweet girl who sees him as a kind-hearted man. It was just another regular day at the two schools standing side by side. Kikyo, the prestigious all-girls school, and Chidori, the rough all-boys school. Rintarou, a student from Chidori, sat by the window, staring at the building next door. He had long accepted that he'd never understand the world of Kikyo girls. They avoided Chidori boys like they were contagious. One morning, Rintarou's friends, Saku, Soe, and Ayato, got into an argument with two boys from another school. None of them wanted to take the blame, and they all started blaming each other. Things were about to turn into a fight, but then Rintarou stepped in. Just one serious look from him was enough to scare the other boys away. Afterward, he lightly scolded his friends for starting trouble, but they turned around and said it was actually Rintarou's fault. The two boys had apparently said something about him earlier. As they walked to school, Rintarou remembered why one of those guys might have recognized him. A while ago, there had been a couple arguing in front of his house. The girl slapped the guy and stormed off. Rintarou, trying to be helpful, walked up to the boy to check if he was okay. But the boy panicked, thought Rintarou was going to hit him, and ran away, only to trip and hurt himself. When Rintarou finished telling the story, his friends didn't look impressed. They knew Rintarou was kind, but his intimidating appearance often made people think he was dangerous. As the group continued walking, they passed two Kikyo girls. The girls quickly looked down and avoided eye contact. One of them dropped her handkerchief. Trying to be nice, Sohei picked it up and tried to return it. But the girl just glared at him and told him to throw it away. She didn't want anything to do with boys from Chidori. Sohei shrugged it off, pretending not to care. He told himself she was just too shy to talk to someone as handsome as him. The boys then entered their own school. It was a plain and simple building, nothing like the beautiful and clean Kikyo Academy next door. Rintarou couldn't help but think about how different the two schools were. The Kikyo girls acted like Chidori boys were some kind of threat. Chidori had a bad name. It was known for poor grades, wild boys, and a lack of discipline. The dislike from Kikyo was so strong that the girls even kept their curtains closed just so they didn't have to see the boys' school. Later, while Rintarou was scrolling through his phone, he got a notification. He had work that day and had to turn down his friend's invitation to hang out. That afternoon, heavy rain poured down as Rintarou ran to the cafe where he worked. His boss, Kyuko, who was also his mom, greeted him. Rintarou nervously asked if it was really okay for him to serve customers. He worried his scary appearance might drive him away. But Kyuko smiled and told him not to worry. There was only one customer to take care of. The rest of the staff were busy baking pastries for the next day's event, so Rintarou was in charge of the front counter. While setting things up, he noticed a wet umbrella by the entrance. Looking around, he saw a girl sitting alone at a table. She looked like a middle school student. What really caught his eye, though, was the stack of empty cake plates around her. She had already eaten several pieces. When the girl noticed him looking, her face turned red and she started to choke. Without thinking, Rintarou rushed over and gave her a glass of water. She quickly drank it but looked very embarrassed. Before he could say anything, she stood up, thanked him for the food, and ran out of the cafe. He was left standing there, unsure of what just happened. That night, while they were closing up, Kyuko casually told Rintarou that the girl's name was Waguri and that she was actually a regular customer. This only made Rintarou feel worse. He worried that his presence might scare her away for good. But Kyuko just laughed and told him not to worry. She said Waguri didn't seem like someone who would be easily scared, and that if anything, cake could solve the problem. The next day, Rintarou was still bothered by what happened. During lunch, he sat quietly, thinking about how he might apologize or where he might see Waguri again. When his friends came over, he told them to go ahead without him. Sohei, watching him walk away, quietly wondered why Rintarou never shared what was really on his mind. After school, Rintarou was relaxing in his room when his mom came in with unexpected news. Waguri was at the cafe and wanted to talk to him. Still in his casual clothes, he rushed downstairs and saw her waiting. Caught off guard, Rintarou awkwardly said hello, but then Waguri surprised him by saying she would treat him. A few minutes later, Rintarou found himself sitting across from her with a slice of strawberry cake and a drink in front of him. Waguri had come to say sorry for running away the day before. At first, Rintarou tried to turn down the treat, but he noticed her sneaking glances at the cake. Quietly, he pushed the plate toward her, offering it back. Though she hesitated, the cake was too tempting to resist. As she began eating with small, happy bites, Rintarou watched in amazement. He couldn't believe someone with such a small frame could have such a big appetite. After finishing her cake, Waguri explained that she hadn't planned to eat so many pieces the day before. She thought she was alone and could enjoy herself without anyone seeing, but getting caught in the middle of her cake binge had embarrassed her. It wasn't fear that made her run away, it was shame. She then admitted she had seen Rintarou working at the cafe before and had always been curious about him. Only now did Rintarou understand. Waguri had run away because she was scared of him. She had been nervous. It wasn't his scary face that made her panic, but something else. Being near him made her heart race. Rintarou was surprised. Most girls either avoided him or acted afraid when they saw him. But Waguri's words were completely different. Her small confession replayed in his mind, and he felt his face grow hot. Not knowing what to do with all these feelings, he stood up and offered to walk her to the station since it was getting late. But before they left, she bought another cake and then said she'd walk by herself. The station wasn't far after all. As she walked away, she suddenly turned back and gave him a bright smile. "I never thought you were scary," she said gently. Then she disappeared into the night. What neither of them noticed was that two boys nearby had been watching everything, and they didn't look friendly. Later, back in his room, Rintarou stared at the floor, lost in thought. Waguri's kindness felt strange compared to how others usually treated him. All the mean things people had said about him over the years came rushing back, things said ever since he was a kid. But through the noise of those memories, Waguri's words echoed clearly in his head. For the first time in a long while, something inside him felt warm. That peaceful moment didn't last. His mom, Kyuko, suddenly burst into his room, holding a familiar box. It was one of the cakes Waguri had bought, but she dropped it outside, not far from the cafe. Worry filled Rintarou's chest. If Waguri had dropped the cake, maybe something had happened to her. He rushed outside and ran through the nearby streets, searching for any sign of her. He knew it could be dangerous at night. After a while, he heard his name being mentioned and followed the voices. What he saw made him freeze. Waguri was cornered by two men. They were asking her questions about him. Rintarou stayed hidden and listened. The men were spreading rumors, saying Rintarou had always been a troublemaker, even back in middle school. They called Chidori a bad school full of losers and said his friends were no good either. Hearing their cruel words hurt Rintarou deeply. He knew his school didn't have the best reputation and he wasn't perfect, but hearing himself described like that still stung. But then Waguri spoke up. She admitted the rumors sounded scary, but calmly asked why they believed such things without knowing Rintarou. She said if they talked to him, they'd see he was nothing like the rumors said. The men didn't listen. But Waguri didn't argue. She just told them to stop spreading lies. It wasn't right to judge someone without trying to understand them first. One of the men let go of her arm, but the other raised his fist, ready to hit her. That's when Rintarou rushed in without thinking. He jumped in front of her and shielded her with his body. Waguri gasped in shock. Rintarou made sure she was okay, then looked at the two guys with cold eyes. The moment they met his glare, both of them froze in fear and backed off without saying another word. Waguri quickly ran to Rintarou. She reached up to his forehead. It was bleeding. He had hit it against the wall while protecting her. She began apologizing, worried that he was badly hurt. But Rintarou gently told her it wasn't from a punch, and it wasn't that serious. Then he said something unexpected. He told her the wound was like punishment for doubting her and for dragging her into trouble. Waguri tried to lift his head, but he stayed bowed, full of guilt. She had done nothing wrong and she got hurt because of him. But instead of letting him continue, Waguri gently wiped the blood from his forehead and told him something he had never heard before. She couldn't understand why people were afraid of him, because to her, he clearly seemed like a kind person. She didn't accept his apology. Instead, she simply thanked him. In that moment, something changed inside Rintarou. He had always accepted that people would misunderstand him. But now someone was looking at him differently, with honesty and warmth. After all the stares full of fear and hate, Waguri's smile felt like sunlight he had never expected to see. To make sure she got home safely, he walked her to the station. Just as he was about to leave, she called out to him. When he turned around, she was smiling and suggested that they eat cake together sometime. Surprised but quietly pleased, Rintarou nodded. Then they went their separate ways. He walked home while Waguri waited for her train, still thinking about the moment he had stepped in to protect her. The next morning, Rintarou arrived at school much earlier than usual. He hadn't slept well, with thoughts of Waguri lingering in his mind. As he stared out the window, wondering when she might visit the cafe again, something unexpected caught his eye. The curtains of the Kikyo school building shifted, and to his surprise, it was Waguri peeking out from behind them. Their eyes met across the courtyard. Both of them froze. Rintarou quickly shut the curtains, confused and surprised. He had thought Waguri was a middle school student. But now he realized something that changed everything. Waguri was actually a student at Kikyo, and that could make everything more complicated. After Waguri was seen through the Kikyo window, the once quiet schoolyard at Chidori suddenly became full of students. So I sat at his desk, complaining to Rintarou about how the Kikyo girls kept giving him angry looks. Normally, he wouldn't care, but today it really started to bother him. Every girl he passed gave him a cold stare and made him feel nervous. Soon, their friends Saku and Ayato arrived, greeting everyone with cheerful good mornings. But even they admitted that Kikyo girls had been giving them dirty looks too. So he was confused, especially because even someone as kind and handsome as Saku was being treated that way. Saku just shrugged it off but said he had never liked how Kikyo girls looked down on them. He believed the two schools would never get along. Saku's words made Rintarou go quiet. That's when the others noticed a bandage on Rintarou's head. Before they could ask, Ayato wondered aloud why Rintarou's side of the curtains was shut. Trying to help, Sohei said it was probably because Rintarou didn't want to see the Kikyo building first thing in the morning. But Rintarou suddenly shouted that it wasn't true. His outburst surprised everyone and he awkwardly made up an excuse. Most of the group accepted it, but Saku still felt something was off. When class began, Rintarou couldn't focus. He kept thinking about Waguri's shocked face when she saw him earlier. He remembered how quickly he had closed the curtain. It must have looked rude. He started to worry she wouldn't come to the cake shop again, but thought maybe it would be better that way. The less involved she was with him, the better. After school, Sohei invited Rintarou to hang out. Rintarou checked with his mom at the cake shop, and since she didn't need help, he agreed to go with them for karaoke. As they left the school, they were laughing and chatting, already talking about what songs to sing and what food to eat. But before they could exit the school gates, they saw a large crowd. Curious, the group went to see what was going on, and to Rintarou's shock, it was Waguri. She was standing outside Chidori's gate, clearly waiting for someone. Rintarou quickly turned around, trying to stay out of sight. Meanwhile, Sohei marched up to Waguri and asked why a Kikyo student was outside their school. His rough tone scared her a little. Still, Waguri bravely said she was waiting for someone. Rintarou rushed over and pulled Sohei back, apologizing to Waguri. Then, to everyone's surprise, Sohei started crying. He wasn't angry, he was just jealous. Jealous that someone from their low-status school had a girlfriend. Suddenly, Waguri's friends came running, pushing through the crowd to bring her back to Kikyo. In the process, one of them bumped into Sohei. Angry, Sohei demanded an apology, but one of the girls slapped his hand away and glared at him before leaving with Waguri. As they walked away, Waguri looked back at Rintarou, her eyes full of worry. The group eventually left for karaoke, but Rintarou stayed a little behind, lost in thought. He wondered if Waguri really came just to see him, but told himself she might have been waiting for someone else. His friends looked back and were surprised. They told him his face looked scarier than usual. Confused, Rintarou touched his face and realized something strange. He might actually be happy. Embarrassed, he quickly caught up with the group. At the karaoke place, Sohei was singing loudly, but Rintarou stayed quiet. Saku noticed and asked if he was okay. Ayato and Sohei agreed. Rintarou had been acting weird all day, and they were especially worried since he showed up with an injury. Rintarou thought about telling the truth about Waguri, but imagined how they would react. In the end, he smiled and lied, saying everything was fine. His friends let it go and passed him the mic. Rintarou smiled at Saku and said he was okay. Saku nodded and sang along with him. That night, when Rintarou returned home, he noticed the cake shop lights were still on even though it was late. Curious, he went inside and was surprised to see Waguri waiting there. She smiled and apologized for what happened at school. She said she didn't expect so much trouble between their schools. Rintarou quickly said she had nothing to apologize for. Just then, Rintarou's mom, Kikyo, entered and scolded him for making Waguri wait. She told him to message next time. Kikyo offered Waguri some cake, and even though she said no, her stomach growled. Everyone laughed, and Rintarou invited her to share the cake with him. Rintarou quietly watched her eat, smiling as she enjoyed every bite. Then, between mouthfuls, she asked if Sohei was okay. Rintarou said yes, then asked her why she came to Chidori. Waguri looked down and honestly said she came to see him. She apologized again for causing a scene. But Rintarou told her not to apologize. He was actually happy she waited for him. He blushed, realizing what he had said, and quickly apologized for being weird. But Waguri said his words made her happy too, and he shouldn't take them back. They both looked away, red-faced. Then Rintarou admitted he was scared she might stop visiting the cake shop after finding out he went to Chidori. But Waguri said she was actually glad he was from Chidori, though she didn't say why. She stood up, said it was getting late, and smiled at him before leaving. But just before she walked out, Rintarou saw a sad look on her face. After she left, Rintarou just sat there, staring at her half-eaten cake. He felt bad and wondered if he had said something wrong. Kikyo walked in and saw how sad he looked. She was surprised. He had never looked this down before. Without asking too much, she guided him into the house. Eventually, Rintarou told her what happened. Kikyo listened quietly, then tapped his shoulder and flicked his forehead. She scolded him for letting Waguri walk home alone. Rintarou, still confused about Waguri's words, told her he didn't understand. Kikyo looked at him in disbelief and called him dense. She reminded him that Waguri never looked down on him for being from Chidori. Instead, she reached out to him with kindness. She asked what he thought about Waguri. Rintarou thought of all the mean things people had said about him over the years and felt like someone like Waguri was too good for him. Then suddenly, he punched himself in the face. Blood dripped from his nose and Kikyo panicked, trying to stop the bleeding. While she helped him, Rintarou realized something. He had really hurt Waguri's feelings. He decided he needed to make things right. The next morning, Waguri arrived at school early like always, but froze in surprise when she saw Rintarou waiting outside the Kikyo gate. When he saw her, he walked over and told her he had been waiting just for her. He apologized for hurting her. Waguri looked confused, so he said he saw her sad expression when she left the shop. She crouched down, embarrassed, and apologized for showing that side of herself. Rintarou knelt down too and told her to stop saying sorry. He realized that she had always been honest and kind to him and he wanted to do the same for her. He admitted that he used to believe Chidori and Kikyo would always be enemies. But after meeting her, he started to care what people said about Kikyo because he didn't want them to speak badly about her. He apologized again, saying he was wrong to care about what others thought instead of how she felt. He also told her the truth, that it made him happy to know she had waited for him. Waguri looked surprised, but then gave him a warm smile and said he was forgiven. She stood up straight and formally introduced herself again, saying their schools didn't matter. What mattered was knowing each other for who they really were. Since there was still time before class, Waguri asked for a small favor. She wanted them to go to their classrooms and wave at each other from the windows. Rintarou agreed. When he got to his seat, he looked across and saw her smiling brightly, waving at him with both hands. He smiled and raised his hand too, watching her face light up with joy. The next day, Rintarou complained about how hot it was. Sohei suggested they go to the teacher's room to turn on the air conditioner. On the way there, Sohei complained that school was boring that day and said he couldn't stand it unless something fun happened. While saying this, he suddenly remembered that the sports festival would be happening later that month. Even though it was a normal school event, it was enough to get him super excited. However, when the teacher noticed his excitement, he told both Sohei and Rintarou that they wouldn't be able to take part in the festival. Hearing this, Sohei felt upset and asked why. The teacher explained that anyone who got a bad grade on the upcoming exam would have to take a makeup test during the festival instead of joining the event. Sohei pointed out that they hadn't even taken the test yet, so they shouldn't be punished already. But the teacher, knowing they both had the worst grades in their class, didn't look convinced and asked if they truly believed they could pass. Sohei admitted he had already seen the test material and didn't think he could get a good grade. Even so, Sohei asked if their effort could still be rewarded. The teacher thought for a moment, then made a deal. If both of them managed to join the festival and Sohei won, he would buy him an ice cream. Later, Sohei sat at a desk with his hands on his head, completely stressed out, trying to figure out how many hours he needed to study to get a decent grade. Saku, who saw him like that, told him he wouldn't get anywhere if he kept panicking. Sohei then begged Saku to help him study for the test, but Saku refused, reminding him that even after studying together last time, Sohei still got a bad grade. Sohei promised that this time he would work hard for real and ask again. Meanwhile, Ayato went to see if Rintarou was feeling okay about the exam. But Rintarou was just as nervous and said he was also worried about everyone's grades. He asked Ayato for help, but Ayato admitted he didn't understand most of the test material either. Later, Sohei tried to guilt Saku into helping by reminding him that both he and Rintarou wouldn't be able to play in the festival if they failed, which would make the team weaker. But Saku still didn't care. At the same time, Rintarou got a message from his mom saying the bakery had a special sale. She told him to invite Waguri to go with him. So he sent Waguri a message, but she replied that she was too busy. After class, Sohei asked Rintarou to study with him at the school library. While they were studying, Sohei realized for the first time that he couldn't study well on his own. Rintarou told him to stop being stubborn and ask for help again. Sohei remembered how he failed even after getting help before, which made him embarrassed to ask again. But Rintarou reminded him that Saku also looked forward to the festival and was probably just being grumpy. With a good talk, maybe they could convince him to help. Sohei finally realized he had been acting immature and decided to try fixing things. Before leaving, he said he was excited about the festival because Rintarou would be there too. While sitting alone in the library, Rintarou was surprised when two girls walked in looking for a place to study. He gave up his seat for them and left. On the way out, he heard Waguri's voice and saw that she was helping another classmate study. However, Waguri soon got distracted and started drawing in her books. Her classmate then told her that even someone at the top of the class like Waguri needs a breather sometimes. After hearing their conversation, Rintarou quietly left. He felt impressed by how dedicated Waguri was and disappointed in himself. Compared to her, he felt like a failure who went to a school full of useless students. The fact that he had failed even after getting help made him feel worse. He started to believe he wouldn't be able to pass the test and gave up, deciding he'd just take the makeup exam. But suddenly, Waguri walked up to him and said she saw him hiding behind the bookshelf and followed him. She asked if he had come to study too. He didn't know what to say. His studying wasn't going well at all. So he changed the topic. Waguri then brought up the bakery sale he had invited her to and said she might go to the next one. She explained that she needed to save money from her part-time job before spending too much. This surprised Rintarou. He had always assumed she was just a rich girl. Waguri told Rintarou that she wasn't the girl he thought she was. She also explained that she only joined the Kikyo school because she earned a scholarship, not because she came from a rich family. In fact, she said she didn't have much money and had to work harder than others to succeed. Rintarou was surprised to hear that and asked her why she worked so hard. Waguri explained that she had begged her father to let her attend the school, and now she didn't want to betray his trust. Hearing this, Rintarou felt inspired. He told Waguri he wanted to take his studies seriously, just like her, and asked if she could help him study. Hearing this made Waguri happy. Even though she was busy, she promised to reach out when she had time. Just as Waguri was about to leave, one of her friends, Subaru, showed up. He asked who the boy with her was and seemed suspicious of Rintarou. When Rintarou noticed Subaru's silver hair, he guessed that she was a foreigner. Subaru then asked Rintarou if he was from Chidori. When Rintarou said yes, Subaru got even more upset. He told Rintarou to stay away from Waguri, saying he didn't want someone from Chidori near his friend. Waguri tried to stop Subaru and explain, but Subaru interrupted her. She said he would do anything to protect Waguri from the so-called brutes of Chidori. It was clear she didn't trust Rintarou at all. Meanwhile, Rintarou's friends noticed Rintarou from a distance and called out to him. They then asked the two girls on what they were doing with Rintarou. Subaru, annoyed, told Waguri that they shouldn't waste time talking to people from Chidori. One of the boys, Soe, didn't like being insulted and started walking toward them. He said he recognized Waguri and wanted to talk. At that moment, Subaru pulled Waguri away and Rintarou pushed Sohei aside. Realizing what he had done, Rintarou quickly said he acted on instinct and didn't really understand why. As Subaru walked off, Saku mocked her and brought up an earlier question they hadn't answered. He also asked how Subaru was allowed to have dyed hair, since most Japanese schools don't permit it. He guessed she must be from a spoiled, rich family if her school was that relaxed. Just as Waguri was about to defend Subaru, Rintarou stepped in and told Saku he had crossed the line. He reminded him that he wasn't usually the type to say such lame things. Rintarou also explained that the girl with Subaru was the same one who had been waiting at the Chidori gate the day before. He admitted that he was actually the one who first spoke to Waguri, which is why they had been seen together. Sohei then apologized to Waguri for scaring her the other day. Waguri bowed and apologized too, in case she had done anything wrong. This surprised everyone since Kikyo girls weren't usually like that. Sumaru didn't like it and got angry with Waguri for apologizing to students from Chidori. When Waguri asked Subaru to apologize too, Subaru simply walked away. Later, while they were talking, Waguri reminded Subaru that Rintarou had defended them when Saku made those horrible comments. This made Subaru think that maybe Rintarou wasn't so bad after all. That night, Rintarou went back home and tried studying again, but he kept making the same mistakes. Even though Saku had explained everything, he still couldn't get it right. While he was studying, Waguri messaged him and asked if they could talk. When Rintarou answered the call, he noticed that her voice sounded softer than usual and asked if something was wrong. Waguri said she just wanted to apologize for how her friend Subaru had acted earlier. She said Subaru was actually a good person deep down. Rintarou told her he wasn't angry, but Waguri still felt bad. She said she had made Rintarou lie by pretending he had been the one to approach her, even though it was her idea to talk to him. As they spoke, Rintarou noticed that Waguri still used very formal language, which made him feel like she was keeping her distance. Before ending the call, Waguri asked if he wanted to study together that weekend. Rintarou happily accepted. Just as she was about to hang up, Rintarou quickly asked her to stop using such formal language with him, hoping it would help them get closer. After they hung up, both of them blushed, especially Waguri. A few days later, Rintarou woke up early, feeling both nervous and excited. Today was the day he would study with Waguri. He had been looking forward to this moment ever since they made plans together. After getting dressed, he took the train. Just like always, a few girls whispered about his height. He ignored them, though it made him feel a little awkward. He looked out the window as the train moved through the city. Even though it was the same view we saw every day, the buildings and streets felt brighter to him. Everything seemed new just because he was going to see Waguri. When he arrived, he realized he was early. Waguri was already there, waiting with a warm smile. Rintarou was surprised. As he looked closely at her, he began to notice how cute she really was. They went to a nearby cafe that Waguri had been wanting to visit. When the food came, her face lit up as she took a bite. Rintarou quietly smiled while watching her. He remembered how Waguri always seemed happiest when she was eating. Curious, he tried the food himself and found it surprisingly delicious. After eating, they began their study session with math. It went well at first, but at one point, Rintarou tried to show something in his notebook. Waguri leaned in close to see. Their faces ended up very close to each other and both froze in place. Their cheeks turned red as they quickly pulled away, embarrassed. From that moment on, it became harder to concentrate. Their thoughts drifted elsewhere. Waguri asked him why he wanted to pass the test so badly. Rintarou replied that he wanted to enjoy the sports festival with his friends. She found that answer amusing and teased him gently, asking if he really loved his friends that much. Rintarou thought for a moment and admitted that he did. Waguri said she understood. She began talking about her friendship with Subaru, her childhood friend. Even though Subaru acted cold and tough, Waguri believed she was a good person. She explained that Subaru had a hard time with boys in the past, which caused her to act distant. But it meant a lot to Waguri that Rintarou hadn't spoken badly about Subaru when they first met. Before going home, Waguri handed him a notebook. It was filled with study notes she had made for him. Rintarou was touched by her effort. He told her he didn't want to be a burden, but Waguri insisted they were in it together. She wanted him to enjoy the festival with his friends. She said she would look forward to hearing all about it. Then she smiled, waved goodbye, and walked away. Just as Rintarou turned to leave, someone grabbed his arm. It was Subaru. She looked serious and asked him to talk privately. Rintarou, confused but curious, followed her to another cafe. He already felt nervous before the conversation began. Once they sat down, Subaru asked him if he was dating Waguri. The question shocked him so much that he dropped his hot coffee, burning his hand. Subaru calmly gave him a handkerchief. Her behavior was surprisingly gentle. She asked again what kind of relationship he had with Waguri. Rintarou wasn't sure how to answer. They hadn't known each other long. He admitted they only met recently, which seemed to ease Subaru's mind a little. Then Subaru made a surprising request. She asked him to stay away from Waguri. Rintarou tried to explain that just because he came from Chidori, it didn't mean he was a bad person. Subaru replied that she already knew that. She remembered how he had stood up for her before, even when she had insulted him and his friends. But she explained that Waguri's school, especially the teachers, looked down on students from Chidori. Waguri was able to stay in the school only because of her scholarship. If people saw her getting close to someone from Chidori, her future could be affected. As they spoke, a small child tripped nearby. Rintarou moved to help, but Subaru reached the child first. She picked up the toy the child dropped and returned it. The child thanked her and even complimented her unique hair, calling it cool. Subaru smiled faintly, and the moment seemed to bring back memories for her. She told Rintarou that when she was younger, she was bullied for having unusual hair. But Waguri was the first person to say something nice about it. She had stood up for her and made her feel accepted. From that day on, Subaru looked up to her and made a promise to protect her, no matter what. Even if Waguri ended up hating her, she would still protect her. Subaru then bowed her head and repeated her request for Rintarou to stay away from Waguri. Rintarou thought about how people from Chidori and Kikyo Hyde didn't get along. But Waguri had been different. She didn't treat him badly. She had wanted to know him better. He gently refused Subaru's request. He couldn't bring himself to stop seeing Waguri after everything they had shared. After Rintarou left, Subaru stayed behind in the cafe, feeling conflicted. She knew things would get harder from here. But she also knew something else. Waguri had smiled the brightest when she was with Rintarou. Later, while riding the train home, Rintarou continued thinking about Subaru. He had never met someone who cared so deeply about a friend. It made him wonder if he had ever cared that much about anyone before. Two girls walked into the train car looking for a seat. Without hesitation, Rintarou gave up his seat for them. They recognized him and thanked him. One of them mentioned that he had also given up a library seat before. Rintarou didn't expect to be thanked, especially since most people were intimidated by his appearance. That moment reminded him of Waguri. She always noticed the small things he did and made sure to thank him. He realized she had a way of saving people, not just Subaru, but him as well. The next week at school, everyone was tense. The teacher was about to announce the exam results. He looked around the room with a serious face and finally said that both Rintarou and Sohai had passed. The classroom went completely silent for a moment. Then the students erupted in cheers. They celebrated loudly, calling them the two biggest idiots in class, but in a loving way. Rintarou was overwhelmed with happiness. Some classmates even cried from joy. Everyone thanked Saku for tutoring them, and Rintarou made sure to thank him too. As Rintarou pulled out his phone to message Waguri and share the good news, he suddenly stopped. Sumeru's words came back to him. He stared at the screen, unsure what to do. At that moment, Saku bumped into his desk during a celebration and some books fell to the floor. While helping to pick them up, Saku noticed the notebook Waguri had given Rintarou. Her name was clearly written on it. Curious, Saku asked about it. Before Rintarou could say anything, Saku was already asking about the note. Rintarou froze in shock. Saku had seen Waguri's notebook. Soon, the rest of their friends gathered around. Ayato tried to grab the notebook, but Rintarou reached for it at the same time. Unfortunately, Ayato had already seen the name written inside. He remembered hearing Sumeru call Waguri by name in the library and started putting the pieces together. Saku began asking if Rintarou's reason for talking to Waguri that day was even real. The atmosphere grew tense. Other students started watching closely, wondering if a fight might break out between Saku, Rintarou, Ayato, and Soe. Saku kept asking questions, but Rintarou couldn't find the right words. He wasn't sure if he should tell the truth about Waguri. In the end, he simply said that he didn't want to talk about it at the moment. Before anyone could say more, the teacher walked over and told them to clean up because class was starting soon. As everyone began tidying up, Sohei noticed the tension and quickly pulled Saku away to calm him down. Rintarou quietly apologized to Ayato, who forgave him right away. Still, Rintarou felt guilty about how things ended with Saku. After school, Rintarou went straight home, upset with himself for leaving Waguri's notebook out in the open. He thought about the note she left inside and realized he still hadn't properly thanked her. Meanwhile, Waguri was studying when she got a text. It was from Rintarou thanking her for helping him pass his exams. He told her it was all because of her. Waguri blushed and smiled as she replied, saying he deserved some credit too because he worked hard. She ended her message by telling him to enjoy the upcoming sports festival. Rintarou read the message, but Subaru's warning echoed in his mind about staying away from Waguri. Not knowing what to do, he didn't reply and turned off his phone. Waguri saw that he read her message but didn't mind. She simply wondered what kind of events he might enjoy at the Chidori Sports Festival. The next day, Sohei and Ayato were still worried. Ever since the notebook incident, Rintarou and Saku had been avoiding each other. Ayato told Sohei that it was his turn to help since Rintarou was the one who helped them fix things before. Sohei agreed, though he was nervous. Wearing a cap, he invited both Saku and Rintarou to practice baseball at the batting cages. Sadly, both of them turned him down. Sohei began to worry. How would they manage the sports festival if things stayed this way? Still, he didn't give up and kept watching his friends closely, determined to help. Later that day, Rintarou and Saku still walked home separately. On Saku's way home, Ayato and Sohei suddenly showed up and asked to talk. Saku brushed them off, saying there was nothing to talk about. But Ayato was serious and didn't back down. Surprised by Ayato's firm tone, Saku glanced back but only muttered that he was annoyed. He walked faster, forcing his friends to catch up. A few steps behind, Ayato called out and asked if Saku was mad because Rintarou was involved with a student from Kikyo. Saku scoffed and said that wasn't it. What really bothered him was that Rintarou didn't trust any of them. His honest words caught both Ayato and Sohei off guard. They had never seen Saku this upset. Saku stopped walking and looked down. He remembered the early days of their friendship when Rintarou had thanked him for always being there. Rintarou had promised to listen whenever Saku needed someone. He thought they were equals, friends who could trust each other. Sohei thought carefully, then said Rintarou just had that kind of personality, kind and selfless. He probably didn't even realize how Saku was feeling, but it didn't mean he thought badly of him. Ayato agreed. He reminded Saku that during the notebook incident, Rintarou didn't push them away completely. He had admitted something was wrong but wasn't ready to talk. That moment was the most honest he had ever been. It made Ayato happy because it felt like they finally saw the real Rintarou. Ayato believed Rintarou would open up more one day when he was ready. Saku still looked down, but he seemed calmer. To cheer them up, Sohei suggested they go eat ramen. Meanwhile, at his family's cake shop, Rintarou was helping clean the display cases. His mother, Kyuko, noticed his gloomy mood and teased him, asking if he failed a test. Rintarou said he passed everything. She laughed, thinking he was joking, until she realized he was serious. She even joked that maybe he cheated, which annoyed Rintarou. Just then, the shop bell rang. Kyuko welcomed the customer cheerfully. It was Waguri. Hearing her name, Rintarou hid behind the counter, eyes wide with panic. Waguri apologized for arriving late and asked if there were still cakes left. As she chatted with Kyuko, she mentioned wanting to treat herself for doing well on her midterms. Kyuko looked toward Rintarou, trying to get him to come out, but he signaled for her to keep quiet. Annoyed, Kyuko grabbed his arm and pulled him up, revealing him to Waguri. She told Waguri that Rintarou had been there the whole time and also did well on his exams. Then she nudged him to take Waguri's order before walking back into the kitchen. Waguri stepped forward, smiling. Before ordering, she lifted her hands above her head and said it was time for a high five to celebrate. Rintarou smiled and gave her a weak high five. Waguri noticed it lacked energy and gave him a curious look but didn't say anything. Rintarou quickly packed her cakes. After giving her the box, Rintarou offered to walk her home, but Waguri said no. He still had shop duties. As she picked up her cakes, she told him to eat well if he's feeling sad. Rintarou was surprised. Waguri explained that eating always made her feel better. She nervously tried to give examples, stumbling over her words. Rintarou couldn't help but laugh. For the first time in a while, he laughed freely. Waguri smiled warmly, glad to see him feel lighter. Rintarou stared at her as she promised to visit again soon. He kept looking at the door even after she left. From the kitchen, Kikyo peeked out to check on them. Seeing her son lost in thought, she quietly stepped back, giving him space. Alone, Rintarou let his expression soften. The warmth Waguri left behind stayed with him. He remembered Subaru's warning that he should stay away from Waguri for her sake. For a while, he believed it. But now, after seeing her smile just for him, he started to question that belief. He realized he couldn't ignore her anymore. Waguri was special to him, and he didn't quite understand his feelings yet, but they were growing. At the train station, Waguri waited for her train. Seeing Rintarou at the shop had been a surprise. She had only gone there for cake, but seeing him was the best part. She thought about his laugh and how cute it was. She also remembered the high five and worried a little about his lack of energy. She pulled out her phone and reread their old messages about the sports festival. She wondered if she should have asked what was bothering him. Then suddenly, her phone buzzed with a new message. Later that night, back at home, Rintarou sat down for dinner. The food looked a little special. He took a bite and was surprised it tasted amazing. Kikyo told him it was a small celebration for passing his exams. She said he had been working hard and deserved some recognition. Rintarou mentioned he even got a perfect score on one test. Kikyo flicked his forehead, still surprised at how good his grades were. She told him she was happy, not just about the grades, but because she saw him changing. She remembered how easily he gave up as a child. More than anything, she was proud of his new attitude. She added that she could tell something else was bothering him but wouldn't push. She believed he'd figure it out when he was ready. She mentioned how she had worried before when things got awkward between him and Waguri. But when she saw him run out the door that time to fix things, she knew he was someone who cared deeply and always tried to do what was right. As she got up from the table, she told him that all she wanted was for him to be happy. Elsewhere, Subaru sat quietly at the old playground from her childhood. She thought about how Waguri had always defended her when they were little. Soon, Waguri arrived and apologized for being late. She looked around and recognized the place. And she asked Subaru what was so important it couldn't wait until school. Subaru took a deep breath and said quietly, "I talked to Rintarou." Subaru remembered a day from her childhood when she cried hard because she was scared after Waguri fell from the monkey bars. Waguri had been smiling completely fine and tried to calm her down, saying she'd been obsessed with hanging upside down lately. That only made Subaru cry harder, afraid it was dangerous. Through her tears, Subaru made Waguri promise not to do risky things anymore, and Waguri agreed, wiping her tears and promising to be more careful. She had even told Subaru that she was a kind person for worrying. Now in the present, that memory made Subaru cry again. In her mind, she could see younger Waguri, cute, small, kind, and beautiful. But more than that, Waguri had been stubborn and strong. To Subaru, she was a hero. Wanting to hold on to that feeling, Subaru imagined hugging the younger Waguri from behind, wishing she could be more like her. Snapping back to reality, Subaru admitted something to the real Waguri. She told her she had spoken to Rintarou recently. She had seen him at a cafe over the weekend and waited until Waguri left before approaching him. Subaru confessed that she had asked him to stay away from Waguri, and now she felt deeply sorry for it. Waguri was shocked at first but quickly calmed down, which surprised Subaru. Waguri explained that she had recently learned how much Kikyo and Chidori dislike each other, and that Subaru's meeting with a Chidori student must have been for her sake. Smiling, Waguri apologized for making Subaru worry so much. Subaru felt confused. Why was Waguri apologizing to her? The truth was, ever since that conversation with Rintarou, Subaru had been afraid Waguri would find out. She had been distracted at school, even when Waguri tried to talk to her. But Rintarou never told Waguri, and Subaru began to feel relieved, thinking their friendship would stay the same. She tried to live as if nothing had happened, but the guilt kept growing until she felt like she couldn't breathe. Finally, unable to carry the weight any longer, she texted Waguri to meet her here so she could confess everything. Subaru apologized again and again, realizing she hadn't changed from the weak girl she used to be. Even though she had grown her hair and tried to look stronger, inside she still depended on others. As she cried and apologized, her thoughts began to spiral. Waguri took her hand and lightly slapped her cheek, smiling warmly. She suggested they spend the evening at the park like they did when they were kids. Without hesitation, Waguri ran to the monkey bars and started hanging from them. Sumaru, eyes still swollen from crying, told her to be careful because her clothes might get dirty. Waguri just smiled and reminded her that they used to play until they were filthy. She asked if Subaru remembered the time she fell from the bars. This time, Waguri admitted it had hurt a lot, but she had cheered up because of Subaru's words back then, when Subaru begged her to send all her pain to her so she wouldn't have to feel it. Subaru flushed and denied it, but Waguri insisted those words had taken away her pain. She called Subaru kind, but Subaru argued that Waguri's kindness had saved her instead. Slightly annoyed, Waguri pressed her face into Subaru's chest, telling her to stop putting herself down. She reminded Subaru that she loved her, and that Subaru should love herself too. Waguri explained that after the fall, Subaru could have scolded her for being reckless, but instead she cried for her. That was proof she was a kind girl. Growing up with Subaru by her side had always made her happy because she knew Subaru would support her no matter what. Hugging her, Waguri said she hoped Subaru would one day see herself the same way. Heading toward the slide, Waguri promised she would keep reminding Subaru how much she loved and valued her until Subaru finally believed it. Watching her, Subaru realized how honest Waguri had always been. Even as a child, she never hesitated to speak her mind, especially when defending her. When Waguri reached the bottom of the slide, Subaru hugged her tightly and explained everything she had said to Rintarou, apologizing for not asking first. She then asked what Waguri wanted to do. Hugging her back, Waguri admitted she still wanted to see Rintarou. Surprised, Subaru asked if she loved him. Without hesitation, Waguri said yes and that she was serious. Subaru smiled and told her what Rintarou had said in reply. When Waguri learned that Rintarou had refused to stop seeing her, her eyes widened and she blushed, hiding her face in Subaru's arms. Subaru held Waguri close, burying her face into her hair. She knew she wasn't ready to love herself yet, but as long as Waguri loved and accepted her, she could live with that. She would always believe in Waguri and silently promise to stay by her side. One day, she hoped to love the version of herself that Waguri loved. She wanted to grow stronger and stand beside her with her head held high. After a while, they left the park, both relieved they had finally talked things through. Waguri even teased Subaru for crying, saying it had been ages since she last saw her in tears. Then Waguri's phone chimed. She checked it and saw a message from Rintarou. He wanted to ask her something and wondered if he could call. At that moment, Rintarou was waiting anxiously for her reply. Subaru's words from before had been on his mind. He wanted to talk to her again but didn't have her number, so he had to go through Waguri. He worried his message might seem strange since he'd left her last ones unanswered. Then it hit him maybe Subaru wanted to keep their talk at the cafe a secret. Unsure how to bring it up, he overthought it until Waguri suddenly called him. Panicking, he answered, unprepared. He started by apologizing for not replying sooner, but Waguri quickly forgave him and asked why he wanted to talk. Nervously, he said he wanted to speak with Subaru. He sounded awkward, but Waguri didn't hesitate. She told him Subaru was with her right now and handed the phone over. Rintarou heard Subaru greet him on the other end. Taking a breath, he said he wanted to continue their cafe conversation because he had something to add. Subaru suggested they meet in person after school the next day. The following afternoon, Rintarou arrived at the park she had mentioned and found her waiting. He asked if it was okay to meet while still in their school uniforms. Subaru smiled and said it was fine. Then, a bit stiffly, Rintarou asked what it would take for her to let him keep seeing Waguri. Subaru jokingly told him that she wasn't Waguri's mother and had no right to make that decision. This flustered him, but he went on to explain that he understood the tension between their schools, yet still wanted to see Waguri. At the same time, he didn't want to cause her trouble and didn't know what to do. What he really meant was, he wanted Subaru's help to make sure their meetings didn't create problems for Waguri, since Subaru would know best. Subaru stared at him, saying he shouldn't be asking her that, especially after she already told him to stay away. She even reminded him she'd said some harsh things. She admitted she was surprised he wasn't angry. Rintarou shook his head, saying he wasn't mad, especially because it was clear how much she cared for Waguri. He admitted her insults had rattled him, but he respected her for how hard she worked to make sure Waguri was happy. He said he couldn't ignore someone who cared that much, and he wanted her to be at ease with him seeing Waguri, knowing it mattered to her. For the first time in their talk, Subaru met his eyes. Inside, she felt relieved that the man Waguri loved was so kind-hearted. At the same time, guilt tugged at her for treating him so coldly before. A small laugh escaped her, and she muttered that she was an idiot. Then she told him she'd already told Waguri everything they discussed at the cafe. Rintarou froze, worried about whether she had included his more personal words. Subaru didn't answer directly. Instead, she said it might be possible for him to keep seeing Waguri if they met far away from either school. Before he could respond, a soccer ball slammed into his stomach, making him double over. A young boy ran up to apologize but stopped when he recognized them as the pair who had helped fix his toy at the cafe. Grinning, he said they must be good friends since he always saw them talking together. Both Subaru and Rintarou were reminded of how much their schools hated each other. Rintarou quickly tried to say they weren't really friends, but the boy didn't believe him, insisting people who talked like that had to be friends. His friends called to him, and he waved before running off. Subaru admitted that calling them friends might be a stretch, but said she hoped one day Rintarou could see her that way. Surprised, he stepped back, reminding her about his school. To his surprise, Subaru didn't seem bothered. He asked if something had happened, but she just smiled and said, "That's a secret." Rintarou lay flat on his bed with his phone in hand, scrolling through the group chat he shared with his closest friends. Normally, the chat was full of chatter, jokes, complaints about homework, or arguments over sports. But now the silence felt heavy. There hadn't been any activity for days. The more Rintarou looked at the empty chat, the more he realized the reason behind it. He knew it was because of him. Something had changed between him and his friends after what happened a few days ago. He had kept secrets from them, and that distance was now clear. Just as regret sank deeper in his chest, his screen lit up with a new message. It was from Waguri. She asked if he had managed to meet Subaru. Relief washed over him. At least someone still reached out. He replied that he had met Subaru and added a quick apology for keeping the cafe meeting a secret. He expected her to be upset, but instead, Waguri's message surprised him. She said she was happy. Now Subaru knew they were friends, and that was enough for her. For a moment, Rintarou stared at her words, his chest warming. He's still worried about his friends, but maybe not everything was falling apart. At Chidori, preparations for sports day filled the school atmosphere. Students trained hard, running across the grounds and practicing in teams. Baseball practice was in full swing when Soei groaned loudly. He had noticed something off for days. Pointing across the field, he muttered about Rintarou's strange behavior. The others looked, and what they saw confirmed it. Rintarou stood in the outfield, his mind clearly elsewhere. He missed every ball that came his way, even letting one hit him in the side without reacting in time. So I frowned. Normally, Rintarou was incredible at sports, even if his grades in class were far from impressive. But lately he had been restless, twitchy, and distracted, even during lessons. So I remembered asking him once if something was wrong. Rintarou had denied it, brushing off the concern. But today, so I was certain, Rintarou was hiding something, and he had had enough of being left in the dark. He called Ayato and Saku closer, lowering his voice. The three boys exchanged uneasy glances, and Sume decided to follow Rintarou after practice. If Rintarou wouldn't tell them himself, they would find out what was really going on. The sun was dipping low when practice ended. Rintarou packed his things and left the school quietly, unaware of the three shadows trailing behind him. Soei, Saku, and Ayato kept their distance, ducking behind trees and corners whenever he looked around. Rintarou's steps carried him far from school until he reached a park. There, waiting for him, were Waguri and Subaru. The boys stopped in their tracks, wide-eyed. What was Rintarou doing with girls from Kikyo Academy, especially Subaru, the girl known to hate Chidori boys? They followed him further when the three went to a family restaurant. Sitting at a nearby table, they leaned in close to eavesdrop. Inside, Rintarou apologized to Waguri and Subaru for calling them out again. He felt guilty for dragging them into his problems. But Waguri, without thinking, admitted she was glad to see him more often. The words slipped before she could stop herself, and her cheeks burned red. Subaru raised an eyebrow at her friends, silently teasing her for being too obvious. The three boys hidden nearby watched with mixed feelings. Soei's jealousy boiled. Rintarou looked far too comfortable with the girls. Saku, however, whispered for everyone to stay quiet. They needed to understand the situation before making assumptions. Finally, Subaru turned serious and asked Rintarou why he wanted to meet. Rintarou's tone softened as he explained. He said he wanted to be honest with his friends. He had kept his friendship with the girls a secret, but hiding it was weighing him down. He admitted that in the past, his appearance scared people away, and he had grown used to the idea of being alone. But then he came to Chidori, where Sohei, Saku, and Ayato accepted him. For the first time, he felt like he had a place he belonged. He admired the strong bond between Waguri and Subaru, who trusted and protected each other no matter what. He wanted the same kind of bond with his own friends. That was why he wanted to confess everything and trust them with the secret, even if it meant trouble for the girls. Rintarou bowed deeply, apologizing once more. He didn't want to put Waguri and Subaru at risk, but he also didn't want to give up on his friends. To his surprise, both are happy that he wants to tell his friends about them. Subaru is even grateful that he considered her feelings before making a decision. Waguri adds that if Rintarou trusts them, then she will also put her faith in him. Shigen says she's open to the idea that all of them could become friends one day. The suggestion makes Subaru worry. but Rintarou feel warm. As night fell, Rintarou offered to walk the girls to the station. They strolled under the dim streetlights until Subaru suddenly slowed down. She spoke up, saying she wanted him to introduce them to his friends someday. She wanted to apologize for her harsh words at the library. Rintarou smiled and promised he would. But before they could leave, a group of men appeared. The blonde-haired leader stepped forward, mocking Rintarou. He accused him of beating up his juniors and said he looked like the kind of guy who would. Rintarou recognized some of the faces. They were the same men who had once hurt Waguri. He tried to avoid trouble, speaking politely and asking to leave. But more men blocked the path. Their eyes soon fell on the girls, recognizing them as Kikyo students. They smirked, calling them cute and stepping closer. Rintarou immediately moved in front of Waguri and Subaru, shielding them. He told the leader to let the girls go home. But the men only sneered, one even reaching out to touch Subaru's hair. That was when another hand grabbed his wrist. It was Soai. Behind him appeared Saku and Ayato, stepping out from their hiding place. They told Rintarou to take the girls away while they handled it. Rintarou hesitated, but the determination in their faces left no room for argument. He guided the girls quickly toward the station, shouting back that he would talk to them later. Back in the park, Saku strode up to the two men hiding by a tree, calling them cowards for clinging to their group. The men spat insults, but Saku's sharp tongue cut them down. One admitted they were the ones who had injured Rintarou before. Hearing this, Ayato dropped his bag, his calm expression hardening. The fight didn't last long. The three friends overpowered the men. Sylvie admired Ayato's skill, while Ayato, ever composed, warned the men not to trouble them again. Then together, the three left the defeated group behind. At the station, Rintarou apologized to Waguri and Subaru, but they only worried about his friends. Soon Ayato called Cheerful to assure Rintarou that everything was fine. Relieved, Rintarou told the girls they were safe. The next morning, Chidori Sports Day arrived. The grounds were filled with cheers, laughter, and competition. Rintarou's classmates pushed him forward, chanting for a home run. But his mind was still clouded with guilt and worry. He struck out badly, disappointing everyone. They told him to rest on the bench. Washing his face, Rintarou thought about how badly he wanted to enjoy this day, yet couldn't because of the heavy weight in his heart. Just then, a water bottle is thrown to him. Looking forward, he saw his friends approaching with relaxed smiles. They teased him lightly, trying to cheer him up. Rintarou finally thanked them for saving him the night before. They grinned, asking how Waguri and Subaru were doing. Then, without meaning to, Sohei admitted they had been spying on him. Rintarou's face flushed red as realization struck. They had followed him from the restaurant all along. Before he could say anything, Sohei pulled Ayato away, leaving Saku behind with him. Saku spoke first. He admitted he was sorry for spying, for saying harsh words earlier, for not thinking of Rintarou's feelings. Rintarou immediately tried to take the blame himself, but Saku stopped him. He pointed out that Rintarou always blamed himself even when it wasn't his fault. Taking a deep breath, Saku confessed. He said Rintarou's words yesterday had truly made him happy. The people he treasured most in the world were Sohei, Ayato, and Rintarou. He asked Rintarou to trust them more. Rintarou's throat tightened, his eyes burning with tears. He crouched down, trying to hide his face, overwhelmed by emotion. From a distance, Sohei and Ayato watched, smiling with relief. Finally, the bond between them was being repaired. Back in the game, the class grew nervous. The score was tight and Rintarou was up to bat again. Whispers spread through the team. He had been off all day. Could they really rely on him now? Then Saku's voice rang out. He reassured everyone that Rintarou was the kind of person who rose when it mattered most. The pitcher threw the ball. Rintarou's grip tightened. He swung with all of his strength. The bat connected with a loud crack. The ball soared high into the sky, carrying everyone's eyes with it. Gasps turned into shouts of amazement. Rintarou dashed across the bases, the sunlight warm on his back. By the time he reached home plate, his class exploded in cheers, rushing to surround him. Hands clapped his shoulders, arms wrapped around him, voices showered him with praise. For once, Rintarou didn't push away the attention. He let himself enjoy the moment, basking in the joy of being with his friends. Not far away, a student snapped a photo. Rintarou smiling, his friends laughing beside him, youth captured in its brightest light.
Take you